Eclipses and Lunations of Full and New Moon. Created, directed, and presented by Reverend Dr. Joe Mullen. In this video, Dr. Mullen will look at eclipses and lunations' effects on the full and the new moon as it relates to our astrological chart.
This is Joe Mullen, astrologer from Orlando, Florida, with some information for you about an element that's really significant in astrology, and that is eclipses. Eclipses and lunations. Eclipses always occur at either a new or a full moon, and they are like intense lunations. But just looking to see how the full and the new moons physically affect all of us, plant growth, the tides, the weather, it's really, really significant to be aware of where and how they fall. If you just learn to do the astrology of the moon through new and full moons and then eclipses, which are sort of supersized versions of that, there's a great deal that can be learned. The 12 houses of the zodiac are the different areas in the heavens around us, and they again can be felt as the earth turns on its axis during the course of the day. The sun appears to move across the heavens and affect us at different ways at noon as opposed to the siesta hour in the afternoon and so forth. And that gives you an idea of where the houses come from. Now, when there's a new or a full moon or an eclipse in a particular house, that will affect the entire experience. If it should be an eclipse, there can be an aftershock effect for a year or more. It's a 28-day cycle if it's a regular lunation. If there should be an eclipse or a new or a full moon in the first house, this represents physical activities, personal matters, the health. If you suddenly decide to dye your hair blue, it might be because there was an eclipse in the first house. New ventures and changing habits. If you want to break a habit that you don't like, eating too much or whatever, an eclipse or a lunation in the first house can be very helpful. The second house will affect your source of income. If there's an eclipse in the second house, a company that you're looking on to provide a job, source of income, might suddenly close down. There could be an offer for a new job. If there are dealings with banks, anything to do with the economy, resources, talents, fluctuations in finances, good or bad. As a professional astrologer, one of the popular questions that concerns people has to do with, will I have enough money? What do my finances look like? Well, an eclipse, a new or full moon that would be affecting the second house can tell you about that. Now, each year, each of the 12 houses will have at least one full moon or new moon lunation in it, and the eclipses are, you have to look up those. I have a website, Sky Maiden Musings, that will give you the dates for that, or the book that I contribute to, the Witch's Almanac, also will have which signs the eclipses and lunations are in each month, and that can be easily placed in your own birth chart. When the third house is involved with an eclipse or new or full moon, there's a lot of travel, running around, phone calls, short trips, communication with neighbors, siblings, new subjects to study. The fourth house will have to do with family matters. A parent or other relative can need extra attention. Your home might need repair. The fourth house relates to endings of things, how things end up. And if you're wrapping up a project, the lunation that affects the fourth house can give insight into that. Real estate, another popular question, whether you're going to sell a house or should list it. The full or the new moon or an eclipse involving the fourth house will be very good for timing on that. The fifth house emphasis is gambling and fun. It's also children, romance, pleasures, creativity. If you want to take up a new hobby, if you're thinking of adopting or having a child, if you're considering a new romance, if there's something that is just a creative idea you really want to explore or express, the full of the new moon or an eclipse in the 5th house will describe that. The 6th house has to do with work and co-workers. Suppose you're hoping someone in the next cubicle will disappear. Well, if you can get that person's birth data, look to see if there's a new or a full moon affecting the 6th house. Or maybe your 6th house, you might get to disappear. Hopefully somewhere good. The 6th house is a time to be productive, pay attention to details, look at health, overall working conditions, and the way the world around you affects daily routine. The 6th house will describe that. The 7th house is all about relationships, another popular question. Meeting somebody new or getting out of the relationship we're already in are very popular topics. If there is a lunation or an eclipse involving the 7th house, that could indicate a shift in relationship issues. The 8th house, a broad spectrum house, is joint funds, investments, loans, taxes, insurance. It's also hidden knowledge, investigations, legacies, debts to be called on, and, interestingly enough, the spirit world, the ghostly realm. A new or a full moon there can show a change in unearned income and also a communication with someone who's no longer with us. If you've been hoping for a message from the spirit world, prepare and meditate on a new or a full moon that might be affecting the 8th house. The 9th house is a desire for travel, long-range plans, people visiting from a distance, maybe a foreign land, intellectual and spiritual interests, publishing, in-laws, legalities, higher education, moral principles. Each of the houses has a number of different touch points. The 9th house, if a new or full moon, a lunation, or an eclipse affects that, can activate all of those areas. The 10th house is important people, being important, and recognition, attention, your reputation, honors, status, and ambition. Once in a while, as an astrologer, someone will ask me, when am I going to be famous? Well, fame has to be kind of promised in the natal chart. Nothing ever happens that isn't in the natal chart. But a new or a full moon in the 10th house or an eclipse there will show some recognition. So good or bad depends on the other circumstances. That's the time when you're likely to be on the evening news and get some recognition. The 11th house is social ties, groups, friendships, also long-term hopes and wishes, helpful people, and circumstances outside of your control can also relate to the 11th house. I like to believe in free will within limits. The concept of whether there is any free will at all is a really hot topic in astrology, and we have brains to think. I think we have some free will, and that the horoscope is like a road map. Well, the 11th house will show where the unexpected can throw a wild card in to free will. It's also describing birds of a feather flock together, so do pigs and swine. Rats and mice will take their choice, and so will I have mine. I love that rhyme. When I think about the 11th house, it's reminding us that we become a part of the company we keep. And finding the right place to hang out can make or break an entire life. The 12th house is hidden things, confidential matters, out of the past. It's also hospitals, institutions, and old problems that can kind of bubble up. A 12th house negative eclipse or lunation can mean a period of hospitalization or institutionalization. It is also a time when, if you have a lot of secrets and have told them to the wrong Gemini, Geminis never shut up. I'm quoting Sidney Omar now, famous astrologer. It'll come up and will be revealed then. And also things going on beneath the surface. If there is a lunation or an eclipse in the 12th house and you don't want something revealed, don't talk about it a lot or put out information about it, because everything will kind of come up and be revealed under those influences. So what's the difference in effect between a solar eclipse at the new moon and a lunar eclipse at the full moon? Well, the sun rules the body, the life force, the continuity of things, while the moon represents the functioning of that. So a solar eclipse can be something that would wipe out a bank account, end a situation, or terminate possession if it's negative. A lunar eclipse will affect the functioning, denying of the normal or regular use of things, whether it might be an automobile, funds, or something to do with physical belongings, or losing your cell phone. I had someone lose a cell phone, which is doesn't sound serious at a glance, but it can be. You just try to be without yours for a while. And that can tie in also with the influences of the sun and moon, and whether they're eclipsing, whether they're new or full, and how they affect the overall qualities of everything in our lives.